Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to Babaduda. And I know it's been a while, but I have a bunch of videos that are getting ready to come out. And yeah, they should be pretty good, so let's go ahead and jump right into this one. So recently I was browsing Craigslist and I found a $100 HP Ryzen 3 3200G computer. So I went ahead and picked it up and this is what I got. So unfortunately, I don't really have a shot of it right after we got it. That's because immediately when I brought it home, I realized it was infested with bugs. So I took it outside, took it apart, and used an electric air blower to blow all the bugs out. So unfortunately, I don't really have a picture of it beforehand, but the case had a couple dents and stuff. So I decided to give it a new paint job. So I took it apart and waited for the paint to dry, and I took a closer look at some of the components. So it came with a DVD drive, which nobody really uses anymore, a 180 watt Gold Plus power supply, which is quite a small power supply, but it's all the system really needs as it doesn't have a GPU, a Wi-Fi and Bluetooth chip that you often find in laptops, but they went ahead and put one in this HP pre-built, a 240 NVMe SSD. I was quite surprised that it was NVMe, because you usually don't find those in like lower end systems like this. So I also found one stick of 8GB DDR4 RAM, clocked at 2666 megahertz, which is definitely going to bottleneck this system because a lot of APUs like the Ryzen 3 3200G, they really need 16 gigabytes of RAM, or else it's going to definitely bottleneck your system. Plus, it's only single stick RAM. A lot of these Ryzen CPUs, they really need that dual channel RAM, or else they're not going to be able to maximize how good they can perform. And the last thing that we found is the motherboard, and on the motherboard we found our gem, the Ryzen 3 3200G, and yeah, it seems to be in pretty good condition. And usually you can find these on the used market for $100 to $150, so I'm pretty proud that I was able to find this one for $100 along with a mediocre system. So yeah, let's see how it performs and let's get into some benchmarks. So after spray painting it and putting it all back together, I think it looks pretty nice. So yeah, let's jump into some benchmarks real quick. So one last thing I want to say before we get into the benchmarks is that I know this seems like a lot of YouTubers just have those really good deals that they can just find locally, but that is not to say that you cannot find these deals locally. So definitely check OfferUp, Mercari, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. I found this certain one on Craigslist. Just look all around you, search with a bunch of different keywords. You'll probably find something good. And yeah, let's jump into those benchmarks. So first up, we have Valorant, and at 1080p low settings, this computer got 80 FPS, which definitely wasn't what I was expecting, but the RAM also was probably a definite bottleneck in Valorant. So the next game we had was Fortnite, and this one was an extremely jumpy experience. At the lowest settings at 1080p, it only got 60 to 80 FPS, but it was extremely jumpy, and that's also why the FPS levels jumped around a lot. The next game we have is CSGO, and this one's quite easy to run, but this computer was only able to get 40 FPS at 1080p, all lowest settings. So I was extremely disappointed with the performance of this computer in CSGO. Next we have Minecraft, and with about medium settings on 1080p, this computer was able to crank out 70 FPS, which is definitely better than some of the other ones, but I was still a little bit disappointed because Minecraft is quite an easy game to run. Next we have Apex Legends, and Apex Legends is usually one of those ones that really tests these computers, and at 720p in the lowest settings, it only got 50 FPS, and this experience was also extremely jumpy, and we couldn't really play very well. The next game on the list is Destiny 2, and this one's definitely harder to run, as we only got 30 FPS at 720p, all lowest settings. And the last game, we have Mafia Definitive Edition, and this one at 720p lowest settings was not even playable because we didn't even hit 30 FPS. It stayed only below 15 FPS. So I was a little bit confused because I really thought that the Ryzen 3 3200G would be able to do a little bit more. So I tried to figure out what I could do to fix that. So the first thing I did was replace this single 8GB stick of RAM with two sticks of 8GB 2400 megahertz Vengeance LPX RAM, which should hopefully boost the performance of not only the RAM, but also the CPU and GPU in some of these games. And then after using a little bit of overclocking to overclock the CPU and GPU, here are the results. So right away, after just overclocking and adding a new RAM kit in, Valorant got 130 FPS on the same settings, which is a whole 50 FPS gain over the 80 FPS that it used to get, which is huge. And Fortnite got 120 FPS and was not even jumpy, which was a plus around 60 to 40 FPS, which is still really good. So I was really impressed with how the RAM and the overclocking did with these two games. CSGO jumped from 40 frames to 100 frames, which went from about unplayable to playable, while maybe not on an esports level, but definitely still playable just if you just want to play some CSGO. Minecraft jumped from 70 to 110, which is still an increase, and it definitely wasn't nearly as jumpy when it was loading in all the textures and stuff, so you could probably turn up your view a little bit more. Apex Legends went from 50 FPS to 80 FPS, which was really big, as Apex Legends is usually a little bit harder to run, so this computer could even reach 80 FPS. I was pretty impressed with that. Destiny 2 went from 30 frames to 60 frames, so 30 frames was kind of like the old, if you can get that, then you can play, but now 60 is kind of the standard, so that's like playable, although it is 720p low settings too, so it might not be the prettiest thing ever. And Mafia Definitive Edition went from 15 FPS to around 30 FPS, which is playable, albeit not super fun to play or whatever. But yeah, I was super impressed with how the RAM kit and the overclocking really boosted this thing's performance and really unlocked that CPU and GPU. So overall, I'm pretty impressed with the performance of this computer. Before adding the RAM and overclocking it, I thought it was a little bit less than I would have expected, but after I overclocked it and added that RAM kit in, it was definitely a lot more than I thought we would end up hitting. And the Ryzen 3 3200G definitely has a lot of overclocking value, along with a lot of the other APUs. You can overclock them and get a lot more performance out of them. So yeah, that's it for this video. Thanks a lot for watching. My Discord just got released with this video. It's in the description below. Make sure you join that. I'm probably going to be doing like a giveaway thing. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one.